Life teaches us many difficult lessons, but one of the harshest realities is this: not everyone around you wishes you well. Some people, quietly and subtly, create harm, confusion, and emotional chaos in the lives of others. Think about it for a moment. You might be sharing laughter with someone, trusting them, opening up about your life, only to later realize that the same person was the source of the stress, pain, or conflict you couldn't understand. This realization can be deeply unsettling. Today, we are going to explore a topic that is both fascinating and disturbing: how to recognize the signs that you may be dealing with a truly toxic or malicious person. Such individuals can appear anywhere in our lives. They might be a colleague at work, a friend you spend time with, or sometimes even a member of your own family. What makes this situation so dangerous is that these individuals are often incredibly skilled at hiding their true nature. They can appear charming, warm, and charismatic. They know exactly how to present themselves in a way that earns trust and admiration from others. But beneath that surface, their intentions can be very different. Understanding these patterns is not about becoming paranoid or suspicious of everyone around you. Instead, it is about becoming aware, observant, and emotionally intelligent. The ancient Stoic philosophers believed that one of the greatest strengths a person can develop is clarity of perception. They taught that when we learn to see reality as it truly is, rather than how we wish it to be, we protect ourselves from unnecessary suffering. By learning to recognize certain destructive behaviors early, we can protect our peace of mind, maintain our dignity, and build relationships that are healthier and more genuine. Wisdom, self-control, and emotional discipline were core principles of Stoic philosophy. And these principles become incredibly valuable when dealing with difficult or manipulative people. In this discussion, we will explore 5 powerful warning signs that may reveal the presence of a harmful personality in your life. These signs are not always obvious at first. In fact, many of them are hidden behind traits that seem attractive in the beginning. But if you learn to observe carefully, the patterns begin to reveal themselves. By the end of this exploration, you will not only be better equipped to recognize these behaviors, but you will also understand how to protect your mental well-being and maintain control over your emotional life. Because the ultimate goal is not to change these people. The goal is to ensure that their behavior does not control your peace, your decisions, or your future. Now let's begin with the first and perhaps the most deceptive sign. Often, individuals who later reveal toxic or manipulative behavior initially appear extremely charming. They seem confident, engaging, and full of positive energy. When they walk into a room, people notice them immediately. They speak well, tell entertaining stories, and have a natural ability to make others feel seen and appreciated. When you first meet them, it can feel like you've encountered someone truly special. They may compliment you, show strong interest in your life, and quickly create a sense of connection. Within a short time, it might even feel like you have known them for years. This intense charm can be incredibly persuasive. However, Stoic philosophy reminds us of something important. First impressions are not always reliable indicators of character. The Stoics encouraged people to observe behavior over time, rather than making judgments based on emotions or temporary excitement. And when you watch carefully, subtle patterns may begin to appear. For example, you might notice that this person constantly seeks attention in social situations. Conversations often revolve around them. They interrupt others frequently or redirect discussions back to themselves. Sometimes they may even make subtle comments that diminish others while presenting themselves as superior. These behaviors might initially appear small or insignificant, but over time, they reveal an important truth. True strength and character do not require constant validation or dominance in conversations. According to Stoic wisdom, a person with genuine virtue speaks with humility, listens with patience, and treats others with respect. But someone driven by ego or manipulation often reveals themselves through a constant need to control attention and social dynamics. Imagine being at a gathering where this person effortlessly becomes the center of the room. People laugh at their jokes, admire their confidence, and are drawn to their magnetic personality. Yet beneath the surface, their behavior subtly shifts. They may interrupt others, subtly mock someone's ideas, or dominate the conversation in ways that leave little space for anyone else. At first, these actions may seem harmless, but over time, These small signals can reveal a deeper pattern, one where charm is used not as a tool for connection, but as a tool for control. And this is why the Stoics emphasized observation. When we slow down and carefully watch how people behave over time, especially when they are not the center of attention, we begin to see their true character. Because eventually, the mask always slips. Picture a social gathering where one individual seems to be the life of the event. They are constantly telling stories, making jokes, and drawing everyone's attention. People laugh at their humor, admire their confidence, and naturally gravitate toward them. At first, it feels enjoyable to be around someone with such energy. Their presence makes the atmosphere lively, and you may even feel lucky to be included in their circle. But as time passes, something begins to feel different. You start to notice that every conversation slowly becomes centered around them. Whenever someone else tries to speak or share something personal, they quickly steer the discussion back to their own experiences, opinions, or achievements. If you attempt to talk about something important in your own life, they barely acknowledge it before shifting the spotlight back onto themselves. This is where a powerful Stoic concept becomes useful: apatheia. In Stoic philosophy, apatheia refers to a state of emotional clarity where a person remains calm and undisturbed by external influences. Instead of reacting emotionally to every situation, a Stoic learns to observe people and events with a balanced and rational mind. When you maintain this emotional balance, it becomes easier to see through someone's outward charm and recognize what may be hidden underneath. Often, behind the charisma lies a deeply self-centered personality that constantly seeks attention and validation. Another important moment to observe is how a person behaves when things do not go according to their wishes. A truly kind and emotionally mature individual can handle disagreements, criticism, or disappointment with calmness and understanding. They may feel frustrated, but they remain respectful and reasonable. However, someone who is only pretending to be kind may react very differently. When their expectations are challenged, they might become defensive, angry, or even hostile. They may attempt to twist the situation, blame others, or manipulate the conversation in order to regain control. According to Stoic philosophy, these reactions reveal a deeper weakness of character. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that anger, manipulation, and arrogance are signs of a person who has not yet learned to govern their own mind. A person guided by reason and virtue does not need to dominate others emotionally. Instead, Stoicism encourages us to practice patience and observation. Rather than forming quick judgments based on charm or first impressions, the Stoics believed we should watch how people behave over time. The philosopher Epictetus taught that we must carefully evaluate the character of those we allow into our inner circle. The people closest to us influence our thoughts, our decisions, and ultimately our lives. So if someone appears almost too perfect at the beginning, it may be wise to slow down and observe their actions carefully. Pay attention to how they treat people who cannot offer them any advantage. Notice how they behave when they believe no one important is watching. This is often where true character becomes visible. Anyone can appear impressive when they are trying to make a good impression. But a person's real nature is revealed in the quiet moments when there is nothing to gain. Remember, charm alone is not proof of good character. Some individuals learn to use charm as a powerful social tool, one that helps them gain influence, trust, and admiration. But when we stay grounded, thoughtful, and observant, we can protect ourselves from being misled by a superficial image. Living according to Stoic values such as wisdom, awareness, and discernment helps us navigate these complex social dynamics with clarity. Now let us move to another important warning sign: a lack of empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the emotional experiences of others. It is what allows people to comfort a friend in difficult times, celebrate someone's success, and build deep human connections. Without empathy, relationships become shallow and often painful. Unfortunately, there are individuals who seem almost completely disconnected from this essential human quality. They rarely consider how their words or actions affect the people around them. The emotional pain of others does not seem to concern them. Stoic philosophy places great importance on compassion and mutual respect between human beings. Once again, Marcus Aurelius wrote frequently about the interconnected nature of humanity. He believed that each person is part of a larger human community and that caring for others ultimately strengthens society as a whole. So when we encounter someone who repeatedly ignores or dismisses the feelings of others, it becomes a serious warning sign. Imagine opening up to a friend about something deeply personal, perhaps a challenge you are facing or a painful experience from your life. You may expect understanding, encouragement, or at least a moment of sincere listening. But instead, the person shrugs it off, changes the topic, or even jokes about your vulnerability. Experiences like this can leave you feeling alone and misunderstood. The absence of empathy is not only noticeable during difficult moments, it also appears during positive moments. Someone who lacks empathy may struggle to genuinely celebrate your success. Instead of feeling happy for you, they may become dismissive, jealous, or attempt to shift the attention back toward themselves. In some cases, they might even minimize your achievements or claim part of the credit. This pattern is not limited to personal friendships. You can see it in professional environments as well. Consider a manager who constantly pushes employees beyond their limits without showing any concern for their well-being. They may demand endless hours of work, ignore requests for rest, or publicly criticize people in a humiliating way. Such behavior creates an unhealthy atmosphere where individuals feel undervalued, exhausted, and emotionally drained. From a Stoic perspective, situations like these require inner strength. The lack of empathy in others reflects their own character, not yours. Maintaining your integrity and emotional balance becomes the most powerful response. However, a severe absence of empathy can sometimes lead to even darker behaviors. When a person cannot emotionally connect with the pain of others, they may feel little guilt when acting dishonestly or cruelly. They might lie, exploit, betray trust, or harm others without experiencing remorse. The Stoic philosopher Seneca emphasized that kindness, fairness, and justice must guide our actions if we wish to live a virtuous life. A person who completely lacks empathy becomes disconnected from these essential moral values. And when that connection is lost, their behavior can become unpredictable and damaging to those around them. A lack of empathy is not only visible in major situations. Very often, it becomes clear through small, everyday interactions. For instance, you might notice someone repeatedly interrupting others during conversations. Instead of listening with genuine interest, they quickly steer the discussion back toward themselves. When others are speaking, they appear distracted or impatient, waiting only for their turn to talk. You may also notice that they rarely offer support when someone clearly needs help. Whether it is emotional support, practical assistance, or simply a moment of understanding, they seem strangely uninterested. At first, these behaviors may appear like small personality quirks or minor social habits. However, when such actions repeat consistently, they begin to form a pattern. And patterns often reveal deeper truths about a person's character. Stoic philosophy teaches us to observe carefully and to develop discernment when evaluating the people around us. Small details repeated over time often reveal more about someone than grand gestures or impressive words. When you find yourself regularly interacting with someone who shows little concern for the feelings or struggles of others, it becomes important to protect your own emotional space. Setting clear boundaries becomes essential. The Stoics believed strongly in preserving one's inner stability. They understood that while we cannot control the behavior of others, we can choose how much influence we allow them to have over our peace of mind. You have the right to distance yourself from people who consistently drain your energy, ignore your well-being, or create unnecessary emotional strain in your life. Protecting your mental clarity is not selfish, it is wise. Now let us explore another powerful warning sign: manipulation. Manipulation occurs when someone uses deception, emotional pressure, or clever tactics in order to control the behavior of others. Rather than communicating honestly, they influence situations in subtle ways so that outcomes benefit them. This kind of behavior can be extremely harmful because it often happens quietly and gradually. People who manipulate others are usually very skilled at distorting situations. They may twist facts, alter narratives, or create confusion that causes you to question your own understanding of events. Over time, this can leave a person feeling uncertain, powerless, and unsure of their own judgment. From a Stoic point of view, manipulation is particularly dangerous because it attacks something the Stoics valued deeply: Clarity of perception. Stoic thinkers emphasize the importance of seeing reality as it truly is. They believed that a clear mind allows us to make wise decisions and live according to virtue. But when someone manipulates you, they attempt to blur that clarity. They create doubt, distort facts, and reshape situations so that their version of reality becomes the dominant one. One of the most common forms of manipulation is something known as gaslighting. This occurs when a manipulative person intentionally makes you question your own memory, perception, or understanding of events. For example, imagine confronting someone about something hurtful they said. Instead of acknowledging their words, they may deny the entire situation ever happened. They might insist that you misunderstood them or accuse you of exaggerating the problem. In some cases, they may even suggest that you are being overly emotional or irrational. Over time, this strategy can weaken your confidence in your own judgment. You may begin to rely more on the manipulator's interpretation of reality than on your own observations. Another common tactic used by manipulators is playing the role of the victim. They may constantly present themselves as misunderstood, mistreated, or burdened by life's difficulties. Through guilt and emotional pressure, they try to make others feel responsible for their happiness or well-being. You might have a friend who repeatedly complains about their struggles and expects you to drop everything to support them. Yet when you face challenges of your own, they are suddenly unavailable or uninterested. Sometimes they may say things like, "If you really cared about me, you would do this." Statements like these are designed to create a sense of obligation and guilt. Stoic philosophy offers a powerful perspective in dealing with such situations. The philosopher Epictetus taught that wisdom begins with understanding the difference between what we can control and what we cannot. We cannot control another person's emotions, expectations, or manipulative tendencies, but we can control our response. Recognizing manipulation allows us to step back, maintain our independence, and refuse to surrender our judgment to someone else's emotional pressure. Manipulators also frequently rely on flattery and charm. In the beginning, this attention can feel extremely positive. They may compliment you frequently, praise your abilities, and make you feel valued or special. However, over time, you may begin to notice that these compliments appear at very specific moments. Often they occur when the person wants something from you. Perhaps they praise you right before asking for a favor, requesting help, or trying to influence a decision. Gradually, their praise begins to feel conditional. You may start to feel that maintaining their approval requires you to meet their expectations or fulfill their requests. This creates a subtle psychological pressure that benefits the manipulator while slowly reducing your independence. Stoic philosophy reminds us that true self-worth does not depend on external praise or approval. When we understand our own values and remain grounded in reason, manipulation loses much of its power. Because a person who is secure in their own judgment cannot easily be controlled by flattery, guilt, or emotional pressure. Stoic philosophy reminds us of an important truth. Genuine virtue and true self-respect must come from within. A person who understands their own value does not depend on the temporary praise or approval of others. External validation can be pleasant, but it should never become the foundation of our self-worth. Manipulative individuals often attempt to weaken this inner confidence. One way they do this is through isolation. A manipulative person may slowly try to separate you from the people who genuinely care about you. They might criticize your friends, question the intentions of your family members, or suggest that no one truly understands you except them. You might hear statements such as, "Your friends don't really support you," or "Your family doesn't understand you the way I do." At first, these comments may appear harmless or even protective. But over time, their true purpose becomes clear. By weakening your connections with others, the manipulator increases your dependence on them. When your support system becomes smaller, it becomes easier for them to influence your thoughts, your decisions, and your emotions. Stoic philosophy strongly values meaningful human relationships. The Stoics recognize that while individuals must develop inner strength, human beings are naturally social. Supportive communities, friendships, and families create stability and emotional resilience. Isolation works against this natural balance. When someone attempts to separate you from the people who care about you, it weakens your network of support and leaves you more vulnerable to manipulation. Another form of manipulation can involve money or financial control. Some individuals may borrow money repeatedly without any intention of repaying it. Others may attempt to control financial decisions in ways that reduce another person's independence. In certain relationships, one partner may insist on handling all financial matters, limiting the other person's access to resources. They may create a situation where the other person must ask for permission before spending even small amounts. Over time, this kind of financial control can become a powerful tool of dominance. If someone controls your resources, they may indirectly control your freedom as well. Stoic philosophy encourages individuals to cultivate self-sufficiency and independence whenever possible. A person who maintains control over their own decisions and resources is far less vulnerable to external manipulation. Recognizing manipulation can be difficult, especially when the person involved is someone you care about. Emotions can make it harder to see the situation clearly. However, Stoic thinkers consistently emphasize the importance of awareness and rational judgment. When something feels wrong, it is wise to step back and examine the situation with calm objectivity. Ask yourself a few honest questions. Does this person regularly place their needs above yours? Do they frequently make you feel guilty, uncertain, or responsible for their emotions? Do they attempt to control parts of your life or distance you from other people? If these patterns appear repeatedly, it may be time to establish stronger boundaries. Setting boundaries means clearly communicating what behaviors you will accept and what behaviors you will not tolerate. It requires calm confidence and a willingness to protect your well-being. The Stoics remind us that every individual has the right to their own thoughts, emotions, and decisions. While we cannot control how other people behave, we always maintain control over how we respond to them. By remaining mentally strong and emotionally clear, we protect ourselves from the harmful influence of manipulation and continue living according to our values. Now let us examine another powerful warning sign: controlling behavior. Few traits reveal a harmful personality more clearly than the desire to control others. This behavior goes beyond simple preferences or occasional disagreements. It involves a persistent attempt to dominate another person's choices, actions, and independence. People who behave in this way rarely present themselves as controlling at the beginning. Instead, they often disguise their behavior as concern, guidance, or protection. They may claim they are only trying to help you make better decisions. But beneath that explanation lies something very different: a desire for power. Stoic philosophy values personal freedom and self-discipline. According to Stoic thinkers, each individual should learn to govern their own actions and decisions. A person who constantly attempts to dominate others acts in direct opposition to these principles. Controlling behavior can appear in subtle ways at first. For example, you might have a friend who insists on always deciding where the two of you go and what activities you do together. Initially, this might seem harmless or even convenient. But over time, you begin to notice that your own preferences are rarely considered. Your opinions are ignored, dismissed, or replaced by theirs. They might say things like, "Trust me, I know what's best," or "You'll enjoy it more if you just follow my lead." Although these statements may sound friendly, they often reveal an imbalance in decision-making. Healthy relationships involve mutual respect and shared choices. But when one person consistently imposes their will on another, the relationship becomes unequal. In romantic relationships, controlling behavior can become even more concerning. A controlling partner may closely monitor your daily activities. They may demand constant updates about where you are, who you are with, and what you are doing. In extreme cases, they may attempt to dictate who you are allowed to meet or spend time with. This level of surveillance is not an expression of care. It is an attempt to dominate another person's independence. And from a Stoic perspective, any attempt to restrict another person's autonomy contradicts the principles of wisdom, dignity, and self-mastery. Controlling behavior can also appear through constant monitoring and invasion of privacy. For example, a controlling individual may demand access to your phone, read through your private messages, or insist that you share all your passwords with them. They may justify this behavior by saying they simply want honesty or transparency in the relationship. However, over time, this type of surveillance can become exhausting and emotionally draining. You may begin to feel as if every action is being watched or evaluated. Instead of feeling comfortable and secure, You may constantly worry about saying or doing something that could trigger conflict. Living under this kind of pressure often creates a sense of anxiety, as though you are always walking on fragile ground. From a Stoic perspective, personal freedom begins within their mind. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus frequently emphasized that true independence comes from maintaining control over our own thoughts and decisions, regardless of external circumstances. When someone attempts to dominate your privacy or choices, they are attempting to weaken that inner freedom. Control can also appear in financial matters. A controlling partner, friend, or even family member may insist on managing all financial decisions. They may control how money is spent and limit your access to financial resources. Sometimes they justify this by claiming they are simply better at managing money. They might say things like, "Let me handle the finances because you are not very good with numbers," or "It's easier if I take care of everything." While these statements may appear practical on the surface, the result can be the gradual loss of financial independence. When one person controls all financial resources, the other person may feel trapped. It becomes much harder to make independent choices or to leave an unhealthy relationship when financial power rests entirely in someone else's hands. Stoic philosophy strongly encourages self-sufficiency. Having the ability to manage your own resources and make independent decisions protects your freedom and dignity. When financial control is used to dominate another person, it becomes a form of quiet oppression. Controlling behavior can also involve attempts to isolate you from the people who support you. A controlling individual may gradually discourage you from spending time with friends or family members. They might criticize the people close to you or claim that those individuals do not truly care about your well-being. You may hear statements such as, "Your friends don't really understand you," or "Your family is a negative influence." Over time, these comments can slowly weaken your connections with others. As your social circle becomes smaller, you may begin to rely almost entirely on the controlling person for emotional support and companionship. The Stoics understood that human beings flourish in supportive communities. Friendships, family connections, and meaningful relationships strengthen emotional resilience and personal growth. Isolation does the opposite. When someone intentionally separates you from your support system, it makes you more vulnerable to their influence. Controlling individuals may also rely on fear to maintain their power. In some cases, they may threaten to abandon the relationship, harm themselves, or even harm others if their demands are not met. Such threats create an environment filled with tension and uncertainty. When fear dominates a relationship, it becomes extremely difficult to think clearly or make decisions that truly serve your well-being. The Stoic philosopher Seneca often wrote about the importance of courage in the face of fear. True strength, according to Stoic philosophy, lies in refusing to surrender your judgment simply because someone attempts to intimidate you. When a person uses threats to control your actions, they reveal a profound lack of moral character. Understanding controlling behavior requires recognizing its deeper purpose. It is not simply about preferences or habits. At its core, control seeks to undermine your independence and weaken your ability to live according to your own choices. Stoic thinkers would describe such behavior as a direct attack on personal freedom. Our autonomy, our ability to think, choose, and act according to reason, is one of the most valuable aspects of human life. When someone consistently attempts to take that away, it becomes necessary to respond with clarity and strength. Remaining faithful to your values and protecting your independence allows you to resist the influence of controlling individuals. If you find yourself dealing with someone who repeatedly demonstrates controlling tendencies, establishing clear boundaries becomes essential. Communicate calmly and directly about what behaviors you are willing to accept and what behaviors cross the line. At the same time, do not hesitate to seek support from trusted friends, family members, or mentors who understand your situation. Stoic philosophy reminds us of a powerful truth: we cannot control the actions of others, but we always retain control over our responses, our choices, and our principles. By remaining grounded in reason and valuing our own autonomy, we protect ourselves from the damaging effects of domination and manipulation. Living in accordance with our values allows us to build lives that are authentic, dignified, and fulfilling. Now let us look at another serious warning sign that can reveal a deeply harmful personality: pathological lying. Unlike the small social lies people occasionally tell to avoid discomfort, Pathological lying involves a constant pattern of deception. These individuals lie repeatedly, often without any clear reason, creating a web of falsehoods that can become extremely difficult for others to untangle. Another clear warning sign of a harmful personality is chronic dishonesty, often described as pathological lying. Unlike occasional small lies that people sometimes tell to avoid awkward situations, this type of deception becomes a consistent pattern. Such individuals invent stories, alter facts, and reshape reality in ways that serve their own interests. Sometimes these lies appear to have no clear purpose at all. But over time, the pattern becomes obvious. The truth is repeatedly twisted so that the liar gains sympathy, admiration, or personal advantage. This kind of behavior can be extremely destructive to relationships. Trust, which is the foundation of any meaningful connection, begins to erode. When someone lies frequently, the relationship slowly becomes tangled in confusion and doubt. You may begin to question what is real and what has been fabricated. Stoic philosophy places immense value on honesty and moral integrity. The Roman emperor and Stoic thinker Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the importance of living in harmony with nature. In Stoic thought, this means aligning our actions with truth, reason, and virtue. A person who constantly deceives others lives in direct opposition to these ideals. Rather than engaging with reality honestly, they create an artificial version of events that benefits only themselves. Pathological lying can begin in subtle ways. At first, a person might slightly exaggerate a story in order to appear more impressive or interesting. They might adjust details to make themselves look more successful, talented, or admired. But as time passes, these exaggerations often grow into larger fabrications. They may hide mistakes, deny responsibility, or manipulate situations in order to protect their image. In some cases, a pathological liar might claim achievements that never actually happened. They might take credit for work done by others or invent stories about their past in order to gain sympathy or admiration. Over time, the constant dishonesty creates a distorted reality around them. People interacting with such a person often feel uncertain, never fully sure which parts of the story are true and which are inventions. Consider how such behavior might unfold in a professional environment. A dishonest individual may exaggerate their qualifications or claim responsibility for projects they barely contributed to. They might even spread misleading rumors about colleagues in order to damage their reputation or secure an advantage. Situations like this can quickly create a toxic atmosphere where trust disappears and people become suspicious of one another. Stoic philosophy offers guidance in these circumstances. The philosopher Epictetus taught that our focus should remain on what lies within our control, our own character, actions, and decisions. While we cannot stop others from being dishonest, we can choose to remain truthful and principled ourselves. In personal relationships, constant lying can be even more damaging. Imagine sharing your life with someone who repeatedly lies about their past, their actions, or even their feelings. Over time, this behavior can create deep emotional insecurity. You may begin to question your own perceptions and memories. You might replay conversations in your mind, wondering whether you misunderstood something or whether the truth was deliberately hidden from you. This confusion often benefits the liar. By keeping others uncertain and emotionally unsettled, they maintain control over the narrative. Stoic philosophy reminds us to trust our reason and judgment, rather than becoming trapped in endless doubt. The philosopher Seneca wrote that true peace comes from within. When we remain grounded in clarity and self-awareness, the dishonesty of others cannot easily disturb our inner stability. One of the most difficult aspects of pathological lying is that it is often hard to detect at the beginning. Habitual liars can appear extremely convincing. They speak with confidence, add vivid details to their stories, and sometimes mix fragments of truth with falsehoods. This combination makes their narratives seem believable. Because of this, Stoic philosophy encourages a mindset of careful observation. Rather than accepting every claim at face value, the Stoics advised people to evaluate situations thoughtfully and look for evidence before forming conclusions. Attention to patterns becomes essential. If you discover that someone has lied, observe how they respond when confronted. Do they react with hostility or defensiveness? Do they attempt to shift the blame onto you? Or do they calmly acknowledge the mistake and take responsibility? A person committed to honesty will eventually correct themselves and accept accountability. But someone who is deeply comfortable with deception will often create even more confusion in order to protect the original lie. Recognizing this pattern allows us to protect our own clarity of mind. Stoic philosophy ultimately teaches that while we cannot control the character of others, we always retain the ability to choose our own path. By valuing truth, practicing awareness, and remaining loyal to our principles, we protect ourselves from becoming trapped in another person's web of deception. And in doing so, we preserve something far more valuable than approval or convenience: our integrity and inner peace. Sometimes, when a person is confronted about dishonesty, they may offer an explanation that appears reasonable on the surface. It may sound convincing enough to quiet your doubts for a moment. However, in many cases, this explanation is simply another layer of deception. A person with genuine integrity usually responds differently. When they realize they have made a mistake, they acknowledge it openly and attempt to correct it. Someone who is habitually dishonest rarely does this. Instead, they tend to defend their falsehoods even more aggressively, adding new stories and explanations in an attempt to protect the original lie. Over time, this creates an increasingly complex network of deception. Stoic philosophy encourages a calm and rational response to this kind of behavior. Rather than reacting with anger or emotional confrontation, the Stoics advised observing the situation clearly and recognizing it for what it truly is. Remaining composed allows you to see the pattern without becoming emotionally entangled in it. Another important factor to consider is the long-term impact of constant dishonesty. Trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. When that trust is repeatedly broken, the relationship slowly begins to deteriorate. Once confidence in someone's honesty disappears, rebuilding it becomes extremely difficult. You may begin to question everything they say. Doubt becomes constant, and even ordinary conversations may feel uncertain. This atmosphere often leads to a cycle of suspicion, tension, and resentment. Stoic thinkers believed that strong relationships must be built on honesty, mutual respect, and understanding. When dealing with someone who lies repeatedly, it becomes necessary to ask an honest question. Is rebuilding trust truly possible, or would it be healthier to distance yourself from the situation? If you find yourself entangled with a person who constantly deceives others, protecting your emotional and mental well-being becomes essential. Setting firm boundaries is one of the most effective ways to do this. Stoic philosophy encourages us to remain loyal to our own values. We cannot control the actions of others, but we can decide what behavior we are willing to accept in our lives. Be clear about what you will tolerate and what crosses the line. And if necessary, do not hesitate to step away from relationships that are built on dishonesty. Your peace of mind and personal integrity are far more valuable than maintaining a connection with someone who repeatedly betrays your trust. This raises an important question. How can you protect yourself from harmful behaviors like manipulation, dishonesty, and control while still maintaining your inner calm and dignity? One of the most powerful tools you can develop is the ability to establish healthy boundaries. Boundaries define the limits of what you will accept in your relationships. They create a clear line between respectful behavior and actions that damage your well-being. These limits are essential for protecting your emotional stability, your mental clarity, and sometimes even your physical safety. From a Stoic perspective, boundaries are not only practical, they are necessary for maintaining a balanced and virtuous life. Stoicism places great importance on personal integrity and inner peace. When you allow others to repeatedly violate your limits, that peace becomes difficult to maintain. Setting boundaries helps preserve both your dignity and your stability. It is also important to understand that establishing boundaries is not an act of hostility or cruelty. Some people fear that setting limits will make them appear rude or uncaring. In reality, boundaries are an expression of self-respect. They communicate that you value yourself enough to expect respectful treatment from others. The Stoics believed that living according to reason requires honoring our own nature and dignity. By defining clear boundaries, you are not only protecting yourself but also encouraging healthier and more respectful interactions. Clarity is essential when establishing these limits. Vague or indirect communication often leads to confusion. Instead, it is important to state your boundaries clearly and confidently. For example,